Well, guys, I just got back home from watching The Long Walk, and my initial reaction is, where in the world was a New Balance product placement, or Nike, or Adidas, or whoever for all that matters? You guys missed out on some insane PR because we had a guy in the movie legitimately walking in Converse, for crying out loud. You're telling me no one had a pair of New Balance dad shoes lying around somewhere? But in all seriousness, I will be discussing some spoilers for the new Stephen King movie adaptation titled The Long Walk. So if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want to be spoiled, this is your last chance to get out of here. So just as a quick recap, The Last Walk is about an alternate America that is still rebuilding after a second civil war. It's not really clear what kind of war, but it's heavily implied it was a civil war. And it seems the bad guys have won because every year one guy from each state is chosen to volunteer to go on the titular Long Walk. And if you've seen the trailers, you probably know the rules. You must keep a pace of 3 miles an hour. And if you fall below that pace, you get a warning. And if you get 3 warnings, well, you're going to end up taking the long sleep, if you know what I mean. And the last one standing wins a life-changing amount of money, and they're granted one wish of whatever they want. Now, you might be thinking in your head, oh, what's the big deal? Walking at a brisk pace, that doesn't sound too bad. But no, this movie shows just how grueling it is and how fast and easy it is to make a mistake and get eliminated. We see people get Charlie horses, which slow them down below 3 miles an hour and they can't catch up. There was this one guy who twisted his ankle during the night, and by morning time, it was just a bloody blob. And we also had a few scenes which answered the question of, how do they go to the bathroom? And the answer is you either squat and pinch real fast, or you just go in your pants and keep on walking. But this movie doesn't shy away from some pretty graphic violence. It doesn't show every death, but when they do, it's just like a gory, bloody mess. And if you're a fan of a late title drop, ooh, baby, does this one have a goodie for you. It's about like 20 minutes in, and it's when we get our first death, actually, which is honestly the most gruesome of all the deaths. But this poor kid gets half of his face blown off, and then we're hit with, boom, The Long Walk. It was beautiful. But if I had 2 words to describe this movie, it would be depressingly amazing. Now, I know that doesn't make sense, but you'll get over it. The movie is really grim in its world building, and I like how they do a lot of show and not tell. Like I said earlier, America is coming out of another war. It's been about 20 years, but that's all we're really told about the world. Everything else we're just shown. We see the toll it's taking because most of the places we walk through have just been absolutely ravaged by the war. We see abandoned towns, cars left in the middle of the road, and dead cattle just rotting on the side of the road as well. It's a very eerie and dystopian feeling you get walking through the towns. We barely see any other signs of civilization for most of the movie, and when we do, it's often just a single person standing there kind of giving this creepy glare. It's almost like they're mad at these people who volunteered to do the long walk. It's kind of like they're giving in to this new dictatorship, because the so-called reasoning behind the long walk is that the new dictatorship government thinks that the long walk is going to inspire people to want to work hard. By persevering through tough times, you can also be rewarded with riches beyond your wildest dreams. It's some very sick and twisted propaganda, but everyone here already knows that. They willingly signed up to do this and even had time to back out beforehand. This is not some like Hunger Games situation where you're forced to enter this draft. Everyone here is kind of there by their own will. But everyone in this world is dirt poor. Basically, nobody has a job, and this is really the only option for people. And I like how the characters kind of discuss the fact that if the government set up this world, this new world where the only escape hatch to get out of poverty is to do the long walk, is it really a choice? But speaking of characters, let's start discussing them. For most of the movie, we mainly followed Raymond, played by Cooper Hoffman, and Peter, played by David Jonsson, along with a whole bunch of other side characters who are all interesting in their own ways. But the relationship between Peter and Raymond is the crux of this story. We see them become basically brothers over the 350 miles or whatever ridiculous amount it was. And my goodness, do Cooper Hoffman and David Jonsson absolutely nail the chemistry here. Like, if it were any other actors, I genuinely don't know if this movie would work as well as it does. They do such a fantastic job of playing 2 sides of the same coin, if that kind of makes sense. Cooper Hoffman does a fantastic job of playing a guy who wears his emotions on his sleeves. He genuinely cares about the other people walking alongside him, and he's willing to do anything he can to help them, even the people who really don't deserve it. And David Jonsson, my God, he absolutely knocked it out of the park in this role. He also genuinely cares about the people around him, but he's so good at just being very calm and grounded and doesn't let his emotions get the best of him until the very end, but we'll get to that. But man, after seeing David Jonsson in Alien Romulus and now this, he's quickly becoming one of my favorite actors. And I don't know why he's not in more things. Like, just put him in everything now. I really don't care at this point. But I love how Raymond and Peter have similar end goals of wanting to make a difference in this country, but have very different motivations and different ways of achieving that goal. Raymond volunteered for the long walk, not for the money, but because he's on a vengeance quest and he plans on using his wish to get a gun so he can kill Mark Hamill's character, who we find out actually executed his dad. He thinks killing Mark Hamill will inspire the country to, stand up to the dictatorship and demand change. Peter, on the other hand, he also wants to make change in the country, but he plans on using the money to do so and really doesn't have any plans for his wish. But I do love how after spending some time with Raymond, Peter says that his wish is going to be that in the future long walk that there's 2 winners so that their friends can make it too. I thought that was very cute. These two, they just grow such a close, loving bond over the movie, but at the same time, you have that gut-wrenching thought at the back of your head, like, one of them's not going to be making it out alive. But before I get to the ending, I want to talk about some of the other side characters in the movie. First off, Mark Hamill as the Major. He's your typical military asshole, but it's Mark Hamill, so you already know going in that he's going to be doing an amazing job. He's not in it a whole lot, but when he is in it, you can tell Mark Hamill is having fun. And that's good because life is better when Mark Hamill is having fun. Then there were also those 2 other friends of the group. I love how they called themselves the 4 Musketeers. We had Ben Wang playing Olsen and Nuyut playing Baker. I'm sorry, I know I probably messed up your name there. I'm sorry. But both were amazing in the film. It's funny, when we were first introduced to Olsen, I was kind of worried. I thought I was going to get tired of him really quick. He was really quippy early on and has this really funny Brooklyn-like accent, so I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna get tired of this really fast. But I actually loved his character the more and more we went on with him. And I found his death to actually be one of the more sadder ones, honestly. Especially when Baker tried running back to go save him. Ugh, it was heart-wrenching. There were obviously a bunch of other side characters who all came with their own personalities, and they were all fantastic. Most of this movie is talking, over the sound of feet dragging on concrete, so this is a very character-driven story. It's important that everyone is unique and interesting in their own ways, and I think everyone did a fantastic job of doing that. But now let's get into the ending, and if I had one major complaint about the movie is I feel like we kind of jumped into that last scene a little too quick. This movie is only about an hour and 55 minutes, so I honestly feel we could have benefited from just like 5 to 10 more minutes of this movie. But I was watching some behind-the-scenes videos, and the actors apparently did actually walk over 300 miles while shooting this, so they probably did not want to walk any more than they actually had to. But in the end, of course, we were left with Raymond and Peter. And we get a classic switcheroo where Peter tries to sacrifice himself so Raymond can win. But then Raymond comes back to save Peter, and then it's actually Raymond who sacrifices himself in the end. So Peter is the last one left standing, and he's obviously wrecked emotionally and physically at this point. And when Mark Hamill asks what his one wish is, Peter thinks about it, asks for a gun, points it at Mark Hamill, and shoots him in the head. Then Peter looks down a long, dark road, and he simply keeps walking, and that's the end. Now, I've seen some criticism that the ending kind of fell flat, but I kind of disagree with that. I feel like what kind of cheapens it is that Mark Hamill's character kind of just becomes a big dummy at the end. Like, Mark Hamill just tortured Peter and his friends for 5 straight days, and when Peter asks for a gun, Mark Hamill's like, yeah, that's fine. It's not like you're going to shoot me or anything. That would be crazy. It sounds like none of the past winners ever asked for a gun. So Mark Hamill really underestimated what Peter was going to do with that gun. And I've also seen some different interpretations of what the ending means. I've seen some theories that Peter's mind was so tortured by this point that everything at the end was in his head with the general. He never killed Mark Hamill's character. It was all in his head. I saw one where right after Peter kills Mark Hamill, Peter is killed by the guard standing right next to him, and him walking down that long road is him heading to purgatory. But my interpretation is a little more simple and straightforward than that. I think everything really did happen in reality, and Peter walking down that long, dark road is just a metaphor for vengeance. Vengeance leads to a long, dark road, and that's what Peter went to. If you think about it, for the whole movie, Peter is trying to convince Raymond that, hey, vengeance and violence is not the answer. Just because you lost a family member doesn't make it right to go on a vengeance quest. And Raymond is, kind of the opposite. He's telling Peter that, no, killing the Major is the only way to make change. So it was pretty ironic that Raymond is the one who in the end decided to not go through with the violence and save his friend. And it's Peter who, after feeling the same pain of losing a family member, turns to vengeance. I don't know. It's a pretty basic interpretation, but this is definitely one of those films that's left to interpretation. But yeah, The Long Walk is definitely a film you guys need to go out and see in theaters. I give it a rating of 4.5 Benjamin hits out of 5. Okay, pretend I took 4.5 hits, okay? I'm not gonna do it. But that's been my review of The Long Walk. Let me know what you guys thought about the movie down in the comments below. If you made it this far, I hope you consider dropping a like or subscribing. But yeah, I will catch you guys next time.